Some stories don't start with kindness. They begin in places where pride walks tall, and humility sits quietly in the corner. This is one of those stories. A story of power, prejudice, and a piano. When a rich man walked into a small-town restaurant, he saw a black waitress and assumed she was beneath him. What he didn't know was that he was about to witness something unforgettable, a moment that would humble him in front of everyone. Not through anger, but through unexpected beauty. The evening crowd had just started trickling in when he entered. Sharp suit, expensive watch, and an attitude that arrived before he did. The hostess greeted him politely, but he barely acknowledged her. His eyes scanned the room, calculating, not observing. Then he pointed to a corner booth, away from the noise. The kind of booth that said, "I'm better than the rest." He sat down, loosened his tie, and snapped his fingers for service. That's when she walked over, a young black waitress, Polet. He didn't ask her name. Didn't care. He just leaned back, arms spread across the booth like he owned the place. "Get me something strong," he said, not even looking at her. She nodded, unfazed. She'd served hundreds like him, loud money, quiet cruelty. But she kept her grace, jotting it down with a soft "right away, sir." He smirked again. "You got a piano in here?" She pointed to the old upright near the window. "It's mostly decoration," she said with a chuckle. That's when his eyes lit up, not W. He leaned in. "You know how to play?" She hesitated. "A little, yeah." His grin widened. "Well then, maybe you'll play me a tune after dinner." She gave a polite smile, unsure if he was joking or being cruel. Truth is, she hadn't touched a piano in years. Not since her mom passed. But something about the way he asked, more of a command than a request, made her stomach twist. He wasn't curious. He was testing her. And somewhere deep down, he already expected her to fail. As she walked back to the bar, two other servers whispered. "Did he really just ask her to play?" One said. "I bet he's trying to embarrass her," the other replied. She heard them, but didn't flinch. The piano felt like a ghost from another life, one filled with music, with hope. Now, she was just trying to make rent. Still, a part of her wondered. "Should I play?" Meanwhile, he watched her from his seat, swirling his drink, clearly amused by the tension he was stirring. She paused near the counter, staring at the piano. Suddenly, memories rushed in, her mother's fingers dancing across keys, lullabies that filled their tiny apartment. Her mom's voice, "Music is your truth. Don't ever hide it." But truth had no place in rent receipts, in double shifts, in being dismissed by strangers in suits. She shook the thought off. But it lingered, like a note left hanging. She poured his drink, her hands steady, her heart anything but. When she returned with his drink, he raised his glass. "Here's to hidden talents," he said loud enough for nearby tables to hear. A couple diners glanced over. She forced a smile. "Thanks," she said softly, setting the drink down. "So," he said, tapping the rim of his glass, "you gonna play before or after dessert?" His tone was mocking, but his smile was showy, like he wanted an audience. And people were starting to notice. Some leaned in. Others just stared, waiting to see what would happen next. The manager noticed the scene unfolding and pulled her aside. "Is he bothering you?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, it's fine. He just wants me to play." The manager frowned. "You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with." She nodded, appreciating his support. But deep down, she felt something stirring. Not fear. Not shame. Something else, pride? Defiance? She didn't know yet. But it was growing. And it was louder than his smug voice. She returned to his table and met his eyes. "I'll play," she said, her voice calm but clear. A few heads turned. He leaned back, clearly enjoying the attention. "That's the spirit," he said. She walked slowly toward the piano, her steps measured, heart racing. Every sound in the restaurant felt amplified, forks clinking, whispers rising. The piano stood there like a challenge, worn and dusty. She lifted the cover, revealing the keys like an old friend rediscovered. She sat down, fingers hovering over the keys. For a moment, silence wrapped the room. Her breath deepened. Then, a soft chord. Simple. Gentle. It floated through the air like a breeze. People turned. Conversations paused. Even the kitchen noise seemed to dim. She moved from one note to another, unsure at first, but with every bar, she grew more sure, more grounded. The music wasn't loud. But it was alive. And it was hers. A hush fell over the restaurant. Tables once buzzing with chatter now sat still, heads turned toward the piano. Her hands moved more confidently now, like they were remembering something she'd never really forgotten. The melody wasn't flashy. It was soulful, honest. A song her mother used to play. Some guests closed their eyes. Others smiled softly. Even the waitstaff paused. And the man in the suit? His grin faded. Replaced by something unfamiliar, respect. Every key she pressed brought her closer to the little girl she used to be, feet dangling from the piano bench while her mom guided her tiny hands. She wasn't just playing a song. She was playing her childhood. The man who mocked her. He no longer mattered. The audience? Forgotten. In that moment, it was just her and the piano. Her fingers danced. Her eyes softened. And tears welled up, not from sadness, but from release. This wasn't a performance. It was healing. People began to whisper, but it wasn't gossip anymore, it was awe. "She's incredible," one man murmured. A woman put down her wine glass, leaning in with glistening eyes. Even the chef peeked from the kitchen door, wiping his hands on his apron. The room had changed. It wasn't just a restaurant anymore, it was a stage, a chapel, a sanctuary. And this young waitress? She was holding everyone's heart with every single note. The rich man sat frozen. His arms, once sprawled confidently, were now folded tight. He watched, almost confused, like he hadn't expected to feel anything at all. There was no mockery left in him, only silence. And behind that silence, something unfamiliar, regret. He thought he was playing a game. But now, the game had turned on him. He had wanted to humiliate her. Instead, he exposed his own ignorance. The bartender leaned over the counter. "I didn't even know she could play." The hostess, hands clasped, whispered, "I've worked here for 3 years. Never seen her like this." The manager, standing in the corner, smiled proudly. They were seeing her for the first time, not just as a coworker, but as someone extraordinary. It was humbling, inspiring. And more than anything, it made them wonder what other stories were hiding behind polite smiles. She paused. Just for a second. Fingers resting gently on the keys. The room held its breath. Then she began again, this time with more power, more grace. A sweeping run of notes filled the space like waves crashing and pulling back. It was no longer a song, it was a message. "I am more than you thought I was." Each note said it louder. She was taking up space now. And no one dared to interrupt. To the customers, she had just been a waitress. Quiet, invisible, blending into the background. But now, she was leading the room. People who didn't notice her before couldn't take their eyes off her. Some guests started filming quietly. Not for content, but to remember this. This wasn't viral. It was personal. She had become something more than they expected. And she wasn't even trying. She was just being herself. He looked away. Couldn't meet her eyes. For the first time that night, he seemed small, shrinking into his booth, hands clenched. Her music wasn't attacking him. It was just pure. Honest. And that's what hurt most. He came to laugh at someone weaker. But now he saw someone stronger than him in every way. Her strength wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was in her stillness, her silence between the notes. She could almost feel her mother beside her, nodding in rhythm, smiling with that proud glint in her eyes. The keys were warm, familiar, like home. The song reached its peak, and her chest tightened. She wasn't just playing for the room. She was playing through the pain, the joy, the memories. She wasn't a waitress at that moment. She was a daughter, an artist, a woman reclaiming her voice. As the final notes rang out, there was no applause. Not yet. Just stillness. People were too moved to react. Then slowly, like waves rising, the clapping began. A single clap. Then another. Then the room erupted. Some stood. Some wiped tears. Others just stared, shaken in the best way. The silence had spoken louder than any standing ovation. Her gift had left an imprint on every soul in that room. She stood up slowly, head high, hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from release. As she turned, her eyes met his. He quickly looked away, cheeks red, mouth slightly open like he wanted to speak, but had nothing left to say. The man who wanted to humiliate her had just been silenced without a single harsh word. She didn't need revenge. She already had something far greater, dignity. She walked back to her section like nothing happened, but inside, everything had changed. Coworkers looked at her differently now, not with pity, not with surprise, but with a quiet kind of admiration. She wasn't trying to make a scene. She didn't want the spotlight. All she wanted was peace. And maybe, just maybe, a little self-respect she had pushed away for far too long. Even after she returned to her station, the room stayed different. Softer. More aware. Guests whispered with a kind of reverence. No one called for the waitress. No one snapped their fingers. There was a strange calm. People now saw the staff, not as servers, but as humans. It wasn't just about music. It was about how one moment can shift how we treat people we think we already understand. The rich man finally stood up. He walked over slowly, unsure of himself, a man used to control now feeling lost. She looked at him calmly. I didn't know. He started, but his words faded. She waited, not angry, just still. He wanted forgiveness, but didn't know how to ask for it. She didn't give him a speech. No dramatic confrontation. Just a simple nod that said, I heard you. But I don't owe you anything. He placed a thick wad of cash on the table before leaving. But she didn't touch it. The money didn't matter, not tonight. She didn't play for him. She played for herself. For her mom. For every version of her that had been silenced. Some customers stared, surprised. But others understood. Dignity doesn't always come with a price tag. And this was her quiet way of saying, I'm not for sale. In the kitchen, a few cooks clapped her on the back. Girl. You got soul, one of them said with a wide grin. Another just gave her a thumbs up and nodded. They didn't need to say much. She smiled back, heart warm, feeling more seen than she had in years. She wasn't just surviving anymore. Tonight, she lived a moment that reminded her who she really was. Later, the manager came by and quietly said, that was something else. He didn't overdo it. just placed a hand on her shoulder. If you ever want to play again, any night, any time, just say the word. She smiled, touched by the gesture. It wasn't about showing off. But knowing the door was open now. It meant something. It meant she didn't have to hide her gift anymore. The night carried on. Orders came in. Plates went out. Life returned to normal, but she wasn't the same. Every step she took felt lighter. Every smile felt more genuine. She wasn't trying to prove anything now. That weight, the one she'd carried for so long, had finally started to lift. Not because of applause, but because she finally believed in herself again. A few regular customers came up as they left. "That was beautiful," one woman said. "You have a gift," another whispered. She thanked them quietly, humbled but not overwhelmed. It felt strange, being noticed not for mistakes or service delays, but for something that came from the heart. It reminded her how many people walk through life unseen, unheard, when they have so much inside. When her shift ended and the chairs were upturned, she sat at the empty piano again, just for a moment. The lights were low. The hum of the cooler buzzed in the background. She played one soft note, then let her fingers rest. No audience. No pressure. Just her. In that quiet space, she felt something deep. Not victory. Not pride. Just peace. A kind of peace she hadn't known in a long, long time. Before leaving, she scribbled a tiny note on a napkin and tucked it inside the piano bench. "For anyone who feels invisible, you're not. Play your song anyway." She smiled, locked the door behind her, and stepped out into the night. The air felt different. Not because the world had changed, but because she had. And sometimes, that's all it takes to begin again. By the next morning, whispers about the piano waitress were already spreading. A guest had posted a clip online, just a minute long, but it had struck a chord. "This waitress just silenced a rich man with raw talent," the caption read. Comments poured in. "Who is she? I got chills watching this. More people need to see this." She didn't know it yet, but her moment of honesty was quietly becoming something bigger. She came into work like usual, hair tied back, apron on, order pad in her pocket. But something had shifted. Coworkers smiled at her with a new kind of warmth. The air felt lighter. She wasn't walking taller out of pride, but out of self-respect. Not everyone said something, but their eyes said enough. "We saw you. And we won't forget." That evening, as the dinner crowd started rolling in, a woman entered the restaurant with a curious look. She approached the counter. "Is she here? The girl who played piano?" The hostess pointed. The woman smiled and waited quietly at a corner table. She wasn't loud. She wasn't a reporter. She just seemed moved and patient. Like someone who'd come to say thank you. When her shift slowed, she approached the woman's table. "Hi. Can I help you?" The woman smiled gently. "No, I just wanted to tell you. That was one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. I lost my daughter 2 years ago. She used to play like that. Watching you brought her back to me for a moment." Her voice cracked. The waitress stood frozen, then reached out and gently held the woman's hand. They sat for a few minutes, not saying much. Just breathing in the quiet understanding between two strangers connected by something deeper. "You didn't just play music," the woman said softly. "You gave people something real in a world full of noise." The waitress nodded, eyes wet but smiling. "I think I was trying to give that to myself, too." For both of them, the moment meant more than words could hold. Later that night, a man in a casual blazer stopped her. "I saw the video," he said. "I'm a music director. I don't know if you're interested, but would you be open to playing at an event?" She blinked, stunned. "I'm just a waitress," she said with a nervous smile. He shook his head. "No, you're not. You're a musician. You just forgot." He handed her a card. "Think about it." After her shift, she sat outside on the curb, card in hand. A part of her wanted to throw it away. Who was she kidding? She hadn't performed in years. She didn't have formal training, no resume, no portfolio. Just a song in her heart. But another voice inside whispered, "Didn't you already prove that's enough?" The fear was real. But so was the quiet fire beginning to burn again. The next morning, she walked past her old community center. The doors were locked, the building a little more worn than she remembered. This was where she first learned to play, on an old second-hand upright in a dusty corner. She peeked through the window and smiled. That place gave her the start. And maybe it was time to stop running from it. Or better yet, honor it. Later that day, her younger sister texted her a link. "Is this you?" Followed by 3 shocked emojis. The video had gone viral, tens of thousands of views. People were sharing their own stories in the comments, about overcoming shame, about rediscovering forgotten dreams. The waitress stared at the screen, stunned. Her private moment had become a public spark for others. That night, she stood in front of her bathroom mirror, just staring. For so long, she had only seen a tired worker, someone fading into the background. But tonight? She saw something else. A softness in her eyes. A strength in her spine. She whispered to her reflection, "You're not invisible anymore." And for the first time in a long time, she believed it. The next evening, before her shift, she arrived early. The restaurant was quiet, barely lit. She sat at the piano again, this time not from pressure, but from desire. Her fingers moved more confidently now. Not perfect, not rehearsed. Just honest. And that was enough. Each note she played reminded her, she didn't need anyone's permission to be seen, to be heard, to be whole. When the doors opened, customers began to greet her with warm eyes and quiet respect. Not pity, respect. Some even asked about the music. "Will you play again tonight?" She would smile and say, "Maybe later." The manager no longer saw her just as a waitress. He saw her as part of the place's soul now. The shift wasn't just about taking orders anymore. It was about presence. Days later, he returned. Same suit, but something was different. He didn't sit in the corner booth. He waited to be seated like everyone else. When she approached his table, he stood up. "I was wrong," he said simply. "I thought I was making a point that night. But it turns out, I was the one being taught." She nodded. Not out of forgiveness, but understanding. Growth, after all, takes humility. When he left, he didn't leave money this time. Just a folded note. She opened it during break. "You showed me something I didn't know I needed to see. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I hope you never stop playing." No name. Just a quiet apology. It didn't erase what happened. But it mattered. Sometimes, change begins with a single sentence. That night, she pulled out the business card the music director had given her. Her hands didn't shake this time. She sent a message, "Hi. I'm ready to talk about that performance." A moment later, a reply, "I was hoping you'd say that." It wasn't about becoming famous. It was about no longer hiding. For the first time in years, she was saying yes, not to the world, but to herself. She told her sister over coffee. "I'm going to perform. Just a small event." Her sister beamed. Mom would have been so proud. They sat in silence for a moment, both feeling the weight of that truth. Her sister squeezed her hand. "You didn't just play that night. You reminded everyone what courage sounds like. She smiled. Maybe that's what this whole journey was about. The venue was small but full. Lights dimmed. She stood backstage, palms a little sweaty, heart steady. The piano waited under a soft spotlight. As her name was called, she walked out, no apron, no tray, just herself. People clapped gently as she sat. She took a breath. Then she played. No fear, no shame. Just music. Pure, brave, hers. And it filled the room with something unforgettable. After the event, people came up to her, not to flatter, but to connect. That meant something to me. You reminded me of my mom. I haven't cried like that in years. She didn't know what to say except, thank you. Her story wasn't just hers anymore. It had become a ripple, touching hearts in places she'd never imagined. A week later, she walked through a local park. Kids played. Couples strolled. A street performer played an old tune nearby. She dropped a few dollars in the case and smiled. Music was everywhere, hiding in plain sight. Just like she had been. Now she wasn't hiding anymore. Not her talent. Not her heart. Not her story. And that was the real miracle. She returned to the restaurant one quiet evening and sat at the piano once more. Alone. No spotlight. No audience. Just her. She played one soft melody, like a letter to her younger self. The girl who thought she didn't matter. The woman who almost gave up. The song drifted into silence, and she whispered to the air, I'm still here. Not broken. Not bitter. Just beautifully whole.